The other day, I was drawing in my sketchbook and I decided to practice things that I never really draw. At first it was men, and after a few of those I thought, what else do I never really draw? Furniture. I started off trying to draw some chairs, and that's when I came to a startling realization. One, that I cannot draw chairs, and two, that my cat's paws were wet when she stepped on the page and now she's smudged the whole thing. Aside from that though, I couldn't believe that something so common, something I see multiple times each day, something I'm sitting on in this very moment, I cannot draw. On my first attempt, I got the proportions all wrong. On the next attempt, the perspective was from one not of this universe. On my third attempt, I couldn't even finish it. My mind was melting, trying to figure out how chairs work. It was clear that I needed to take this from the perspective of learning to draw something new. To begin this, I needed to find some reference. I searched for a Victorian furniture store and went on their website, and voila, beautiful high-quality photos of furniture to use for reference. With this first exercise, I'm starting off by drawing a box. Now that I've drawn this box, I'm going to try and draw the chair inside of this box, and the goal here is to try and get the entire chair to fit somewhat proportionally inside of this box. I don't want the legs or the top of the chair to come out of this box that I've set for myself. This lets me know if I have an understanding of how big the chair is in general inside of my head. Since I was able to fit the chair pretty well inside of this box, that lets me know that my main problems have to do with the proportions of this chair. So now I'm going to try and redraw it, and on the reference, I'm going to have the lines show where I was looking in the image, and then of course on the paper you can see what I actually ended up drawing. So as I'm drawing this chair, I'm trying to pay special attention to how all of these big shapes come together in relation to each other. I'm not really focused on any of the slight details that make this chair special. I'm just trying to get these big shapes in here. Now on this third attempt, I'm adding in some perspective lines to act as a guide for me as I draw this chair again. These red lines on the reference show what parts of the chair I'm trying to measure as I add them in. Now I'm going to move on to drawing the chair again, and with those guides in there, it should help me place everything in perspective. Can you tell which cat stepped on my page before? As you can see, the reference itself doesn't actually have these lines as I'm drawing it. I have these lines mentally in my head that I'm trying to map or superimpose onto the image as I draw it. And I'm constantly referring back to where these imaginary lines are in relationship to my physical lines that I drew on the page. I try to stick to these guys as best as I can while I'm drawing the chair. I'm trying to stick with, okay, this leg lines up with this line, and the bottom of this foot ends at this line, and not to deviate past it. Because then that's when the proportions or the perspective starts to get all wonky again. So I'm really trying to superimpose these guides onto the reference as I look at it. After drawing this chair, you can really see that there's starting to be some real improvement in my ability to draw chairs after these few attempts. So starting from this basic shape in a box exercise, we build up to building it without the box, and then we slowly add on the details from there. So starting from a basic chair in a box, I'm just trying to get an idea of what I understand about the chair and what I don't understand about the chair. Then, now that I understand where my problem lies, I can focus more on the space between these big shapes, how far things go down, and just try to understand the distance of these things from one another. And I'm not focused on any of the major details in this second step. And then in the final step, I'm trying to build up on top of that previous step where now I add in some of those extra curls and flares and details that make that chair really pretty and separate it from just any normal chair. Of course, this third chair is not perfect. The front right leg on the corner there came out a little bit too much, and so I just put an arrow there to signify that it's not straight, it's a little like bent out. So of course these exercises are just that. They're exercise. They're not supposed to be perfect, but with each attempt it makes it easier to see, and I can learn where my mistakes are and where I need to improve so I can avoid making the same mistakes. Now I'm going to repeat these exercises but with a new reference. So this chair, I am starting again with a box, and immediately right off the bat, I'm struggling. I make this box too small to fit a chair of this size originally. But after I realized that, I just make the box a little bit bigger, and now I'm moving on to trying to draw the chair itself. But again, I start running into an issue where I just can't feasibly seem to fit this chair inside of a box. I have a very hard time visualizing how much space this chair takes up. While I'm drawing this chair, it's easy for me to kind of see how things line up to each other, what the general proportions are, but I can't seem to fit it inside of the box. My head is just having a hard time grasping how big or how small this chair really is. And so you can see that the legs end up coming out from that original box that I drew. And so my problem is mainly visualizing the amount of space this chair takes up, and that's a perspective thing for me, not necessarily a proportions thing. So now I'm going to repeat the steps that I did for the previous reference, but in the opposite kind of order. So I know that my problem is with perspective and not proportions. So I'm going to try and draw this chair as best as I can. After I've got the chair pretty much drawn, I'm going to start adding in some perspective lines. Now, of course, the reference itself doesn't have perspective lines on it. I'm just trying to look at the reference and see like, okay, where would a perspective grid be on this image? And then I'm going to impose that onto this chair that I just drew. And in this way, I can see where does the chair I drew line up with these perspective lines. It'll also show me if I have something out of perspective right here. So this back of the chair was actually too small, and so I can just go ahead and fix that up. And then, of course, the best way to learn something new is to just keep on drawing it. The more that you draw it, the more that you'll learn, and you'll also figure out what kind of mistakes you have the tendency to make. And so for me, I really struggle with this outermost right leg. I don't know why, but I always draw it either too big, too small, or off to the side. But the more that you draw it, the better you get at it. And so for the next few days, that's what I did. I just drew a bunch of chairs. Some from life, some from reference, and keeping in mind whether my issues with certain chairs are with the perspective or the proportions and how it is that I can work through those issues. It can get a bit tedious, but after a few days, it really does improve. So I hope that these 3 steps that I take to break down my drawings helps you learn how to do the same thing and get better at drawing whatever it is you're trying to learn. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love if you left me a comment down below letting me know. Thanks again, and until next time, goodbye.